What's up, everybody? I'm here with Leigh Brown. Welcome to the Massive Agent Podcast. How's it going?
Fantastic, Dustin. Thank you for having me on your show.
Absolutely. I'm excited to talk to you today because you're hilarious and you know a hell of a lot about our industry and are a huge advocate for realtors and property ownership and everything that we stand for as real estate professionals. And you've been through a lot. You've had a hell of a career. So I kind of want to go back to the beginning. I think your story is going to be super helpful and interesting to so many people listening because you, like, not to steal the thunder, but you were selling chainsaws and before you were in real estate, and now pretty much everyone in the industry knows you or has heard of you or seen you somewhere because you've done a great job with your branding and getting out there. So how did you start out? Like, why real estate? What were you doing before that? Kind of give us the background of how you even got into this industry to begin with.
So, the backstory goes back to when I was a kid. My dad made the shift into real estate in 1978. And so, when he became a realtor, I became a realtor kid, going to open houses, helping with flyers, doing all the stuff that kids of realtors get to do, which is why kids of realtors, just like preachers' kids, say, I would never do that job. So I swore I was not going to be a realtor. Went to college on a full music scholarship to Florida State. Then I transferred to Carolina because of a lot of things. Mainly, I was homesick. And then I had to pay because I was off my scholarship. So I became a bartender. Well,
Mm.
after college, I stayed a bartender because that's where I was making my money. Got hired by a regular to go be a stockbroker in Manhattan, which, if y'all can't tell, people in New York have accents. And so they did not understand what I was saying because they spoke incorrectly. I didn't
Right.
fit into that city at all. And after that year, I was back in Charlotte. I'm like, I don't know what to do with myself. And I was driving down 77, which is our highway. And I saw the North American headquarters for Husqvarna, which is premium chainsaws, Dustin. I mean, it's not the low end stuff. This is
That's top
premium
shelf.
chainsaws, weed trimmers, and lawnmowers. So I pulled in and I said, y'all hiring? And the sales manager came scooting around the corner and he hired me on the spot because they needed somebody and I was a woman. At the time, there were no women on the sales force and they wanted to have somebody to showcase. And I had also had the gumption to walk in and ask. So I took that job, which landed me in several different states selling chainsaws, but I didn't like it because I was under somebody else's rules. And every time I would hit my sales goals, they would say, oh, we got your formula wrong. And they would rejigger my formula. So I never really made any more money. I
Mm.
just kept working and the paperwork and the checklist. It was just too much. So I left that and came back home and I'm like, okay, so now I'm 25 years old. I've had three different full time jobs. I have to land somewhere because this is ridiculous. Because at the time, I'm not a millennial, I'm medium aged, which y'all can't tell from wherever you are, but I have a really good hairdresser and only Claire all knows how old I am. And we didn't jump jobs back then. And so daddy said, just come on and get into real estate. I mean, just come on. And so I went ahead and jumped in with my dad. And 21 years later, that's where I am. So when I started, I was single in my 20s, all the excuses we like to make for I'm too young, I don't have any experience, I don't have any money because I had to make it happen. And for the record, my parents are the type that say, you can do this on your own. And they're there and they're cheerleaders, but they don't cheer with their pocketbooks. I had to learn and I had to figure it out. And of course, you get a lot of ups and downs in that process. But real estate, if you let it get into your blood, you'll find a way to survive. The ones who really get into the floundering space, what I've discovered is part of them is still held back from real estate because it's this weird emotional business.
Mm.
You have to be all in and don't mind working 12 and 14-hour days because you really, 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 really want to chase that outcome for your clients, not for yourself. And those are the people who figure it out. And that's what I love about real estate, Dustin. Realtors go through a lot of ups and downs, but they're determined to find solutions.
Absolutely. And uh, that's kind of interesting. I wasn't expecting you uh, to jump there so quickly, but you're right. Like there's so much of this that we have full control over, right? What are we doing with our time, and are we mentally bought in to what we're doing in the first place? And I think if anyone who's struggling would audit themselves and where they're at mentally, they're probably not, or maybe they have one foot out, or they're trying this real estate thing out, and it's one of the hardest industries that I could imagine because there's so much going on. There's so much involved in a transaction. There's emotions, and then all the contract stuff, and you got to make sure that you don't miss out on checking a box on the purchase contract, and there's just a lot going on.
Well,
What are
and
some of
all
the?
that's liability, right? So that's that
Oh yeah,
you have to take this seriously, whether you're part time or full time. You focus on what you're doing because it's a really big deal. And I think that's the moment, Dustin, when realtors are either in or out, when they realize, holy smokes, this is gigantic. And when you grasp that, that's when the light bulb tends to come on.
yeah, I'd agree. I'd agree. It does scare some people away. Like all of a sudden, you, the lights get turned on, and you're like, oh my god, I got myself into this.
I could be
And
a referral agent. Yes, you could. You could totally be a referral agent.
right, right. What are some of the things that you did early on to get clients? Like, how did you get some of the first people that you helped buy and sell?
Daily activities. So I'm very much going to bore you here, and you're ready for the silver bullet and the magic answer. And there must be some secret, Leigh Brown, to selling all the houses. Here's the secret: it's doing the hard things every single day. And what's the hard thing? It's the outbound phone calls. Now, when I came into the business, we were transitioning between the book. And if you're a younger realtor, go back and watch The Money Pit with Tom Hanks and Shelley Long. It's not only freaking hilarious, and it's before we had Property Brothers to give us unrealistic renovation expectations, because that one's really, really, really accurate. But there's an MLS book in there. So I love that. I came in between that and the green screen. So technology was coming. We had a fax machine, but it was a dot matrix. My cell phone was a bag phone that was in my car for emergencies only at $10 a minute. Email was in its infancy. So we didn't have any of this stuff. But I did have a phone. Not this fancy kind, the kind on my desk. Actually, I'll even show y'all if you're watching the video. I still have a desk phone with a cord because sometimes the internet is unstable, for the record, and a landline is your best friend. But anyway, I digress.
Absolutely.
It's all about the phone calls. So I've talked to an agent actually on Clubhouse yesterday, and she had come into a room where I was moderating, and she's like, "What's the secret to getting business?" And I said, "Well, friend, pick up that phone, go to your contact manager, and start calling." And she was like, "Anybody else have an idea?" And I was like, "Oh my God, sister, you got to stop. It's that simple. The people in your phone are the ones that know you." And that's where I started. I called everybody from my church. I called people I went to high school with. I called my teachers from elementary, middle, and high school because I do real estate where I was raised. I called my family. I called my friends in the symphony. I called and called and called. And what did I say to them? Hey, 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 because your script doesn't have to be what you've heard in so many of the coaching programs with, well, who do you know that needs to buy or sell? Because I can't do
Oh,
that. I'm not a I can't be icky. I just don't have it. I'm an organic introvert. So for me to even make the calls, I was having to be my extroverted version of myself. So it means I can't be gross too. I just called and said, "Hey." And that was in the era before you could really screen. I mean, we had answer machines and we had some caller ID, but it wasn't this whole decline accept, push a button for it. And that's where we have to get out of our own way. And you have to get out of your own way, because you can get all the ideas in the world from Dustin's podcast and everywhere else you go, but it boils down to you and the daily actions you're going to take. And here's the math. So if those of y'all that are nerds, you're like, "Leigh Brown, you say that works, but I've been making phone calls." Okay. So first of all, as your broker, I would ask you for your telephone, and I would look at your recents, and I would look and see what is the ratio of reds to blacks, because that's going to tell me whether or not you're actually making outbound calls and you're not just sending text and Facebook messages. Those are not the same thing as your energy, your inflection, your time spent calling them, because they look at the phone call as an investment of time that you're making in them. That really matters. So back to the math. If Dustin, we look at nerd world to go back 60 years and look at empirical data on outbound calls made across all professions, outbound calls, 10% of them turn into business. So if you make one phone call a day, just one, and you do it 5 days a week, leave out Saturday and Sunday. So 5 days a week, that's average of 20 phone calls a month. 10% of 20 is two. So that one phone call a day could lead you to two transactions a month. Now we're in a low inventory market. That's the first excuse you're going to give me. Yes, Leigh, that sounds easy, but there's nothing to sell. Not true. Look at your MLS, look at the pendings, look at the actives, look at the solds. Houses are selling. It's just not you selling them. So you have to, first of all, accept that you might not be doing all the necessary activities, and that's okay. You have to be honest with yourself. Your clients are hiring you to be honest with them. So sitting around laying on the couch eating Doritos is not going to solve your problem. What solves it is daily activities. Now, some of y'all are thinking, oh, Leigh Brown, is that what it takes? One call a day? All right, girlfriend, I will do two. I will do three. Exactly. And that's where that whole concept that's been around for years, that hour of power came from. If you would focus for an hour, your business would be fine. But I get you, y'all don't have an hour. And if you have an hour, you're so ADD, distracted, a little bit depressed right now because of COVID that you're not doing it. Don't give that goal to yourself. Give yourself something that you can say, I did it. I did my one phone call. Because what'll happen is after you make the first one and they don't scream at you or cuss at you and they say, oh my gosh, Dustin, how are you? Good to hear from you. What are you doing? Well, what are we doing? You hang up and you're like, that wasn't so bad. Now I'll call a second one. It's the first step that's hard, not the task itself.
Just like starting an exercise program, the first day is the hardest. Actually getting in the car and going to the gym is the hardest part. And the next day it's a little bit easier. But not all phone calls are created equal. And I think that there's a lot of agents out there that they're like, nope, not going to do cold calls ever because I tried it once and it didn't work, or I tried it for a month and it didn't work. But they were chasing. They were not pleasant on the phone, or they were asking for something immediately to a stranger. And so not all phone calls are created equal. What are some of those conversations that you have? How do they go? Like if you just call the average person during your hour of power, what do you talk about? What do you say?
First thing is, before you pick up the phone, remind yourself you're building relationship. You're not making an ask. You don't need to make an ask. They'll come to you if they need something. So when I call, I say, hey, Dustin, it's Leigh Brown at One Community. How are you?
What's up? Good to hear from you.
So I was just scrolling through to call a client back and I saw your name in my phone and I just thought I'd say, hey, it's been forever since we chatted. So what y'all doing?
I am playing with the kids.
Oh, well, I don't
Yeah,
want to keep you for long because I'm sure they're going to come hollering at you and pull on your leg in a second. But I really was just calling to say, hey, because I need to have some humans around that are good humans, and you're one of my good humans. So thanks for being in my life.
absolutely.
That's how it goes. And those are real phone calls. If somebody needs real estate, they're going to say, so while I got you on the phone, Leigh, so what's happening in real estate? If they don't ask that, they might not need your real estate services, and that's okay. You still got your name back to the top of their mind. And then when they get done playing with the kids, they're probably going to go over to Facebook and be like, well, what is Leigh doing? And they go, look. Well, then you have to ask yourself what they're finding, because your social media has to be a complementary strategy to your phone calls. It's not going to replace them, but your phone calls also don't replace the fact that you have to have a social strategy, because the person you talk to is going to go stalk you online. That's today's practice. So if you go to my Facebook page, what are you going to see? You're going to see a little bit of real estate. You'll see a little bit of my hymn sings on Sunday. You'll see my cooking show. You'll see my dad. You'll see the kids. They can see me. They need to go to your social profile and see you so that the phone call gains depth, because that's going to put you at the top of mind for maybe a minute as opposed to that 10 seconds. And now they're on a Zoom call at work and somebody's chatting them up in the Zoom room. Dude, I just got the call. I got to go to Tahoe. I can't believe I'm getting moved. And you can respond back and say, oh, for real? Can't believe y'all are leaving. But you know what? I just talked to my realtor. You should call her. That's where the payoff is. The payoff is in being top of mind so that they can quickly spit your name back out.
I think there's so many agents out there that just think that all their friends, all their contacts know what they do for a living. And it's always hilarious to me because I like there's so much stuff that comes at us. When we're scrolling our news feed, we're constantly getting interrupted by new things. And so if you are not in somebody's news feed, or if you're not on their lock screen on the phone, if you're not somewhere like in front of them, someone else is. And over time, if you just assume that your friends and family and everybody knows what you do for a living, don't be surprised when Johnny, who just got his license, all of a sudden gets their listing because Johnny was proactive.
Johnny
And
called him.
Johnny called him. Johnny was in their newsfeed with a video. He knocked on their door. He did, all that stuff that we don't like to do.
So I got to show you the math on why you have to make the phone calls and exactly what Dustin's telling you about somebody else being in their space. If we have an American population of estimated 330 million, divide that by the number of realtors. This is the people who subscribe to the code of ethics, not the licensees that roll around in every market, but the actual realtors, members of the trade association, belong to the MLS, code of ethics, the whole kit and caboodle. 1.422 million. That means 1 out of every 232 Americans is a realtor. That's why you have to call them and be in front of them on social and be really relatable and actionable, because most of y'all have a Facebook world of 1,000 people on average, which means you've got at least a few realtors in there. So if you're not calling them, Dustin already told you, and I'll back him up, somebody else is. And we'll tell you, as practicing realtors, the time your stomach hurts the most is if you're driving by your friend's house and
Mm.
you see a yard sign and you're like, oh, they didn't call me. They didn't call you because they forgot about you, friend. And then you also can't react on social media and say, those people are not loyal and they use somebody else and they're dead to me. Nope, nope, nope. It's on you, not on them. It's not on them.
It's 100% on us. And we take it personally. And look, I get it. It's happened to all of us. It stings. We're pissed at ourselves, but that's the only people we should be pissed at is
It's where you
ourselves.
get better, right? Don't we get better when we
Yes.
make mistakes? Because I do. I fail all the time. I have to use failure, though, as a way to move forward and get better.
Yeah. And it's a great kick in the teeth to remind you that you should probably be more proactive and make damn sure that you are reaching out to your contacts regularly. And if you have been, maybe it needs to be more often. You know,
So, we're both on Clubhouse now, and it's a super addictive network, but we're getting to spend time with really interesting people. I was in a room a couple of days ago with a YouTube expert, and not just saying they were a YouTube expert. I like clicked and did a little bit of stalking to find out this person used to work there. And
oh
she
wow.
made the comment that we used to have 8 touch points before we could get somebody to move forward with a purchase. It's now at 22. And that knocked me back on my heels because I said, I've got to rework my strategy for the number of times that my different methodologies get in front of somebody. And it makes sense, right? I mean, the amount of noise in our lives, whether it's podcast or Instagram and Instagram ads and Facebook and retargeting ads and things you get in the mail and the phone call you got and the friend you saw at church and what are you buying at the grocery store, your brains are full. We're all on overload all the time. And I love moments like that because if I sit down and rework my own strategy, it gives me a chance to get better. And why does that matter? Because, friends, you've met some really bad realtors in your time. Call it what it is, whether it's lack of training or the lack of a heart in their chest, whatever it is, they're not great. And they're causing people to think less of you. So if they're out there operating in a really poor manner, and your people don't know who you are, does that mean that your good people could get tangled up with a bad realtor simply because you didn't reach out to them? So the way I look at this is very simply, it's not selfish to make phone calls and let people know that you're available for their needs and you're here. It's selfish not to call them because that means you're putting your own fear ahead of their best interest.
I love that. I absolutely love that way of looking at it. And if you really do believe that you're a great agent and that you put your people first and that you will, like your commission is just like over here, you want to just do what they need done.
Do it.
Why wouldn't you want everyone to work with you? And why wouldn't you fight for that? It just so happens that we're compensated for that when it happens. Beautiful. That's awesome. It keeps us going.
And
Okay.
frankly, in a post-COVID era, people are really focused on relationships. They get it. The reprioritization has been really big in a lot of people's lives So what better time to call and say, "Hey," than to people who have said, "I'm done with Facebook. I'm done with Twitter. I don't deal with censorship. I don't like all the angst out there. I don't understand this. I don't like this." And they're pulling back. When they pull back from everything else and then you reach out, you're filling a societal and physiological need that they have, which they'll reward that with business. Because one thing you have to know about real estate that kind of makes me aggravated and is entertaining all at the same time, the number one thing you have to be to get business in real estate. And I know y'all are poised with your pencils, you're ready to write it down. What's the number one thing I have to have, Leigh Brown? Likability. You have to be likable. If you happen to be competent and knowledgeable, that's almost a perk to the consumer because they really rather like you than you know what the heck you're doing. It's the wildest thing ever. The amount of money people spend on real estate, and realtors don't have to be skilled. But my goodness, if you're skilled, you change everything. When you're knowledgeable and competent, you're a hero, but you have to be likable first. And this is the time for that. We're in an era that needs likability so much.
You mentioned Clubhouse, and I love Clubhouse. I think it's going to be huge for not just us marketers or professionals, but anybody. Like my wife gets on there and she listens to some people that she looks up to in the fitness world, and she's like, this is so cool. Like I'm just listening to them talk live and I can ask them a question if I want. So I think it's going to catch on, but would it have caught on this way 3 years ago? I don't know that it would have, Leigh. And because of what you're talking about, because of COVID, and depending on where you're at, which state you're in, and God forbid you're one of these awful states that, they haven't given you parole yet. I heard that the other day from Missy Bentley. She's like, "Yeah, we're not on parole yet, so we're going to Florida." I was like, "Oh, I like that."
A good way to put it, and sadly accurate.
It's very sadly accurate. So you're starved for interaction. You're starved for, being social. And so, yes, if you can have a conversation with somebody that's not asking them to do something or asking them, who do you know who's looking to buy or sell real estate, and you're just being a human who's social, people want that now more than ever in the last decade or so, I believe. So
I
I think
think
you're
you're
spot on.
100% right. And who knows if it's a real lasting thing or if it's a flash in the pan, but regardless, it feels great to have conversations again. And the business I've gotten from the platform is not because I'm out there saying, send me business. It's because I try to provide value and provide input and ideas, and people reward value with their business. You got to get your mindset flipped around. Sometimes we think we're owed business so that we can provide value. No, you provide value so that you can have the business. And that's what realtors got to really work on. Our messaging as a profession is not great, but we can fix it. HGTV won't do it, but you can.
That's right. A lot of people listening are probably like, wait, I thought Dustin hates cold calling and phone calls.
This is not
No,
cold. This is warm.
exactly. There's a big difference between calling someone you don't know with a script and running through the script trying to pin them into a corner so they have the only thing they can do. What do they call that? Is it not Freudian, but
It's gross, is what it is. Is
yeah,
there an
the
actual term for it?
Socratic selling. Socratic selling, where you ask certain questions, it gets people back into a corner where they can't do anything but say yes to get that listing presentation or whatever. And that sucks. That
Can't do it.
I do not like. But there's no way to get around having a conversation with somebody. If you want to have a client, there's no way to automate yourself into getting a client without having a freaking conversation first.
Because
So
spoiler alert, if you think you can automate it, that's why we have interlopers at the edges of the business trying to automate real estate, the AI and the AR trying to replace you. If you aren't having conversations, you basically just said they may as well take over because if it can be done online, why do they need you? Well, they need you because you're a human and you're going to hear and you're going to respond and you're going to ask great questions and you're going to deliver pros and cons and input. And if you're going to do that at the buyer consult or at the listing table, you could do it the first time you talk to them too.
1000%. And all the different marketing tactics and Facebook ads and this, that, and the other, those are to get, those things are to generate conversations, to get people to have conversations with. Then you still have to have the conversation. And what Leigh's talking about is having the conversation. And so that there's no way to avoid that. Sure, you could do videos, you can have people decide they want to hire you before they reach out, but ultimately, when that first conversation is had, if they're like, oh, that person's not who I thought they were from their videos, or they're not competent, or I don't like them, then it all goes to shit.
Exactly.
So
It's over.
exactly. Yeah. What are some of the things that you're doing on social media, online to market, to brand yourself, and so that when you do make that phone call, people already know what you do for a living? What are you doing for that?
Well, it's got to be something that I like. I think social media, we've lost sight of how it's a way to let people have a little glimpse into your world of who you are because we're too busy trying to be what everybody else is. And if your social strategy consists of purchasing somebody else's stuff, please stop because everybody knows when you bought all your content. We know when you're a bot. So don't be a bot. You got to be
Right.
you. And I'll tell you a little story. So during the Great Recession, when it first hit, I was so panicked about being out of business because the phones stopped ringing. It was worse than right now, where we just don't have any inventory and we all have too many buyers. Back then, there was nothing happening. And I was so panicked about a future in real estate that I went and took organ lessons because I've been playing the piano since I was 6. And I said, I can get a church job playing the organ. I can get some money going there. So I was out there hunting for an alternative. Well, what I turned that into, of course, real estate didn't go away. I did find my business began to grow again, but that was my way of working through fear. And what you'll notice is if you watch my social channel, sometimes I play piano. I'm never perfect. I suck a whole lot. And I do my little hymn sings on Sunday. So you can take all of those moments and tie them back into your messaging in a way that people will respond to. So people respond very well when I give them a glimpse inside my house. I started my cooking show by accident. Although, if you can't cook, you'd probably have more success than me because people love nailed it and stuff like that. But let's just say that you are a hunter. Great. Show some pictures and some little video with tips from what you do as a hunter, because people will say, well, if he knows hunting, he must know real estate. People watch my channel and say, if she can cook supper, she must know real estate. I don't explain or understand how they connect the dots this way, but I will tell you, people respond when you give them something that's worthy of a response. I did a reel a couple of weeks ago. I'm doing better on doing reels on Instagram now that I've finally figured out how to make them. And it was a math trick. I'm a nerd. I love math. Made a little math trick, put the reel out there on Instagram, and the response that came back was really intriguing. And I got a couple of sellers who were like, we don't understand X, we don't understand Y. Fantastic. I'd be glad to explain it. But the cooler thing was I took that and sent it directly to some of my clients who are math teachers or who are tutoring people. Giving people content that they can use in their lives in a way that's impactful ties them back to you as real estate. It all adds up in a way that will never happen when you post an open house or a new listing. Those might generate a tag here or there, but they don't generate conversation. So
There's
my social
something.
strategy is all conversation.
I love it. And it comes back to likability. When people can see you and the things that you're interested in, or that you do for a hobby, or that you do with your family, that you do for fun, likability, they make a personal connection with you. And that personal connection is everything. And I think that there's some people who are unwilling, or they're nervous to put themselves out there like that, because what if somebody doesn't like their hobby? Like,
Oh,
what if they're a hunter, and then these people are PETA members? Like, I'm going to drive them away.
that
Well,
stands for
okay.
people eating tasty animals. Right? So think
Yes,
about it that way, though. You have to put that in your head going in. If a PETA person comes after me, they're not my people. I don't really know
exactly.
where we got to this point where we feel like we have to satisfy the whole world and the whole world has to love us. Friends, you have permission to be yourself. That's going to be such a magnet to the people who identify with you. And it's even a magnet for those who don't identify with you, but they're grateful for your willingness to be. And I've run for office twice, and I'm the professional of getting nasty comments online because for whatever reason, the general public feels obligated to say very ugly things to people they don't know if they carried the wrong letter behind their name. Well, one thing I learned from that is, first of all, I developed a skin and I went ahead. You sometimes have to just go ahead. The trolls will go back under the bridge. The biggest thing I'll tell you is if you make somebody turn ugly in their comments, don't feed the trolls. I'll click like so they know I saw them. and then I'm going to move on, because if you don't respond, they can keep going. And you mostly diffuse the people who type like this by acknowledging them, but let them go. One thing I'll tell you is I got a lot of business from both sides of the aisle after running for office, because people liked the way I conducted myself. They could see that I wasn't ugly or slinging mud, but that mud was slung at me. And I attracted people who want that kind of character. That's what they're looking for. So if you're a hunter who says, here's how I responsibly handle my deer stand, I always make sure I take care of the trash that I find out here on the way in and out, pack it in, pack it out. That's a message that goes with people all over the place. And it's the way that you share, and it's what you share. If you're trying to be all things to all people, you'll be nothing to no one. Change that. They love you. If you have faith life, speak it. If you don't have faith life, speak that. If you're married, speak it. If you're looking for somebody, speak it. I will say I'm currently setting up the guy that does my shred day. So I'm very excited that my real estate business is about to produce another marriage, because I've set up 3 couples in my career. And you speak that into existence too.
That's awesome.
I'm so
Uh,
excited. He's going to fall in love with her. She's the one.
uh, when you are just yourself and you show your life, you attract the right people. Not You don't attract all the people, you attract the right people. And that's enough. I don't think that I know where I was in the beginning of my career. I was told find a farm area, like a small area, and focus all your efforts on that. But me, not understanding things and having a scarcity mindset that I didn't understand, I'm like, well, if why would I just focus on Holiday when I can focus on Salt Lake? Salt Lake's bigger. I'll just be the Salt Lake guy. And then you don't realize your competition is dramatically increased, and all your marketing efforts and your messaging is diluted. So anyways, when you are putting yourself out there online and you are yourself, you're going to attract the right people and you're going to repel the wrong people. And isn't
And
that
that's
what you want?
okay. Yes, right? So think about how big real estate is. You're in Salt Lake City. It's a big city. Even if you had the bandwidth, you could never handle every seller. Even if you had the bandwidth, you could never handle every buyer. And when you start realizing that the space we're in is actually really big, even in the weird market that we're in, but if you get to know your piece super well and they get to know you super well, you can start to have some impact in that niche, whether that niche is geographic, it's a neighborhood farm, or it's old people or first timers or investors or whatever that niche is. Be really, really good in that space. And the best phrase I ever heard for that, Dustin, is don't be an inch wide and a mile deep, be an inch wide and a mile deep. That's where you want to be. So know the schools, know the jobs, know the roads, know the neighborhoods and the builders and the neighbors. Business will come. And at the beginning of your career, it's an organic, natural thing to want to work any lead, anywhere, do anything to cut your teeth. You're going to do it anyway. We get it. You get to the 2 to 3 year mark where you're starting to survive, you're going to start to pull it in. So in your mind, even if you're at the beginning, start to say, well, I really enjoyed first timers, didn't really like this luxury. I really don't think I understand investments. I do understand this. So figure out where your strengths lie and then start digging deeper. Get the education in those spaces so that you can be not just okay, but amazing.
Leigh, we can't do a podcast without talking about your favorite subject that gets so many panties in a bunch, which makes me want to bring it up because it's hilarious. Writing Having a buyer write a letter to a seller. Okay. I've done this a few times in my career. It worked
Me too.
1 out of 4 times, 1 out of 4 or 5 times, but I didn't have the perspective that I now have, partially thanks to you. Do you like it, or do you support writing letters to the seller?
Don't y'all love how Dustin just like gave me a real nice slow pitch right there so that no matter what, I can connect? And that's where we have to think about this. We're writing buyer love letters or having our clients write them in an effort to connect. And it's because we're in a highly competitive market. And you'll hear many agents say, this is how they win. This is the secret to winning is get the seller to fall in love with this buyer out of 30. All right. Understand something. We're in a very big financial space. Again, we have to take our jobs seriously. So you're handling somebody's largest financial instrument in most cases. but it's that large financial instrument that's completely fraught with emotion. So they love their house, they love their neighbors, all this mush is going on. As a professional realtor, your job is to step in there and help separate them from the emotion so they can make a great logical decision so that they can get their goals accomplished, whether it's price or terms or time or whatever it is. That's your job. You're hired to help be the elevated professional because they're mired. It just happens in life. So buyer's agents look at this as, all right, so if emotion's what's going to work, I'm going to lean into it. And so sellers are trying to lean out, buyers are trying to lean in. That's something you got to be cognizant of. That's where trouble starts to happen. And so as an agent, you say to your clients, hey, write a letter, tell them how much you love the house. If the letter said, hey, Bob, loved the house, hope we win, the end, you're fine. Or even, hey, Bob, loved the house, I work in Charlotte, hope I win. That's probably okay. But most agents aren't stopping there. Most love letters fall into this paragraph essay of, OMG, Dustin, we love your house and we read all the scripture on the walls and we can tell that your family is like our family. And we have 3 kids and we're pregnant with a fourth and we're kind of hoping to have a fifth. And we have a dog that's going to live in the yard and we can see our family here. We just love it so much and please pick us. And then they include their picture of themselves and the dog and grandma on her last Thanksgiving with them. And it's this really hardcore thing, which a lot of sellers agents are like, another one of these, make it stop, because they know it's a game. If the sellers see it, they're going to have this temptation to go with that offer because they like that buyer. But here's what I want y'all to consider. That letter I described with a picture describing the family, all kinds of fair housing violations. Why? Because you're in the protected classes. Familial status, protected class. Race and ethnicity, protected class. If there's a picture of the clients, probably going to be getting into that category. And then you see it go all the way down the pathways. My people are runners. Well, now you're in the handicapped, physically challenged category. You're in all kinds of buckets. Think about this. You're going to tell me, but Leigh, I'm the good one. I'm kind. I don't have a discriminatory bone in my body. I feel you, friend. I get it. You're trying to get the buyer to use their emotion. I understand. But the seller may have implicit biases. They may have some subconscious biases and they see your letter and say, I ain't selling to them, even if it were the best offer based on all of the logical items, the terms, the pre-approval, the whole kit and caboodle, but they chose to go with another one because of the letter. You're not talking about winning because of the letter, although you could be, because if the seller told the agent, we'd really like to have a family that looks like us here, that's a violation of fair housing because that's protected class. Y'all get this, right? And you need to understand something. All of our neighbors deserve a chance at home ownership. It's the beauty of America. America has the best property rights on earth, and everybody should have the idea that home ownership is a dream. Whether they chase that dream or not is up to them. Whether or not they achieve it is up to them, but we can't be in the way of that. And if you're allowing somebody to select the buyer based on any of those protected classes, you're a problem. And understand this. I want you to look differently at the letters you're using, because I know that most of you are not using them maliciously. You're using it because it's a tool in your tool belt. I get it. Your buyers want to win. Teach your buyers how to win based on terms. Call the listing agent. I'm a listing agent most of the time. Agents never call me. They send an offer without asking me what matters to your seller. They'll be like, I get you a quick close. What if my seller wants a 90-day close? If you call me and I could say, sellers would prefer X. If you can do it, that might be something I could present to them. There's certain things you can and can't say, but you got to call the agent, open up the lines of communication. It's huge. Then you don't have to use some emotional trick. And here's the bigger picture of it. HUD, Housing and Urban Development, big federal government agency, is watching these things because they know they're a problem. Articles are cropping up all over the place. And if you were watching federal government in December, we got a stimulus package, but most people were talking about the $600. That's where all the memes came from. In that package, $78 million for HUD. I called a buddy in DC, which is one perk of running for office. You get buddies in DC. I said, what's that money for? He said, testing. They're doing more fair housing testing. So ask yourself this. Is using that letter as an emotional wedge worth losing your career over? Is it worth a $50,000 fine because that's the size of a fair housing fine? And frankly, is it worth being somebody who's potentially in the way of somebody getting a house? you can't control all outcomes. You can't control all hearts, but you can be the realtor who completely dials in and focuses on the logic so that you're not in the way of it.
Incredible breakdown. As a listing agent, I don't want to see those. Let me ask you this, because I've heard listing agents are like, well, if it comes with the offer, I have to present the love letter. Is that true?
You should always ask your state and ask your broker, right? Because I'm in North Carolina, but you don't have to present that letter if you've positioned everything correctly. So, what I do is with my sellers, I explain to them what's happening in the market. I explain to them what kind of letters we will see, and I get their permission to put an MLS. Buyer love letters will be stripped from offers. From the second I list that house, agents know don't bring it. And if they bring it, I'm stripping it because I talked to my sellers about why we're stripping it. You just need to make sure that you're telling them what you're doing. I'm very transparent with my clients, but I also don't tell them I'm just stripping it. I tell them I'm doing this to protect them from possible fair housing violations. Make sure they know that this is federal law. It's a big deal. And frankly, Dustin, it makes my heart very upset when agents want to argue with me over practices that could be perceived as discriminatory. How about you take a real hard look at it and make sure? And if you're doing it in the legal way, it's a really thin lane that you're walking on. I would
Right.
prefer to stay out of that lane altogether and focus on my offer, my terms, and my communication and do the best thing I can for my buyers. And you got to tell your buyers this too, y'all, because they see it online. They see online that people are doing this as a practice. They may ask you as agent, hey, agent, I want you to write my buyer love letter or you do this for me. You need to tell them, look, friend, what if you lose the house because of who you are? Would that piss you off? It totally would. Then let's don't do it. Don't give them the chance to rule you out based on who you are.
Incredible breakdown. One last question, and then we'll get into our rapid fire either or questions, which are kind of fun. Um, totally shifting gears here. Since you've been an agent, you said what, 21 years?
Yes.
What's
My
been the
business is
hardest?
old enough to drink.
Yeah, which is absolutely a prerequisite to surviving in this industry. Uh, What is the hardest thing for you? What's been the hardest thing about being an agent?
The hardest thing about being an agent has to be the sheer emotional drain that the business is, because you'll have a client that calls and cusses you out, and then they hang up, and you're just floored because we're people pleasers. And then they call back and say, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to unload on you. But you're like, I can't even, because they unload on you because you're so close to the situation. And it's a hard thing about real estate, especially for a new licensee to figure out, holy crap, I'm in the middle of their marriage. I'm in the middle of their money. I'm in all the places that actually cause the most turmoil in life, which is divorces and money. And realtor knows more than parents, knows more than colleagues and best friends. And you're the only safe person they have. And so they often treat you as a sounding board. They treat you like a therapist, although please don't call yourselves one unless you're licensed. Realtors got to stop that. But they treat you like you are one. They dump. And it's because they can trust you. And I find that to be hard because I'm the person, nobody cries alone in my presence. I'm very Dolly Parton about those things. So I take it all and I wear their stuff like a burden. I have to work hard to separate myself from it and stay in that logical place and not fall into the emotion. I think that's the hardest part. And it's something that's never explained in pre-license in school, Dustin. And nobody ever thinks about that by watching HGTV, because when you're watching house hunters and they just look at three houses in 30 minutes and buy one, you don't see the raw emotional depth that we fall into when we're doing our jobs appropriately.
I think that's also what makes you an incredible agent that's had success for 21 years, is because you are there for your clients. You do invest emotionally into the process on their behalf. And it's you're right, that's hard. Like, I've struggled with that at times. It's pissed me off at times. It's made me want to leave the industry at times. And I've loved what I do for a living at times as well. And the alternative, I think, is to just be cold and totally cut off to it. But that's not going to make you a great agent. You
Or a
have to
great
be,
human.
or a great human. Exactly. Exactly. All right, Leigh, let's do these rapid fire questions, and then we'll wrap it up with letting people know where they can find you and learn more about you and what you're doing. So either or questions, pick one or the other. You don't need to elaborate unless you want to, and we'll blow through these.
Let's do this.
Let's do it. Facebook or Instagram?
Instagram.
Instagram or Clubhouse?
Clubhouse.
Oh my. Okay. Books or podcasts?
Books.
Podcasts or audiobooks?
Podcast. I hate audiobooks.
Really?
Yes, I don't absorb. Look, here's my desk. Look at all these books laying around just in my office.
Nice. Yeah, it wasn't until the middle of 2020 that I actually started reading physical books again, and I love it. I absolutely love it.
It's the tactile, the smell.
Yeah. There's more focus, but when you're reading a physical book, there's more focus. Yeah.
Oh, we got digressed.
Yeah. iPhone or Android?
iPhone.
Of course. Alexa or Google Home?
Neither.
I'm getting that answer more and more these
I don't
days.
want the government in my house. All the microphones are turned off on my iPhone too.
There you go. Burgers or pizza?
Burgers.
New York or LA?
New York.
If you have to.
I have to.
NFL or NBA?
Neither. I'm a college ball girl.
That was my next question. College or pro?
College.
Nice. Mountains or beach?
Beach.
Podcasts or vlogs?
Vlog.
You like the vlogs?
Yes.
YouTube or Facebook Live?
Facebook Live.
Uber or Lyft?
Uber.
Gary Vee or Grant Cardone?
Grant Cardone.
And what's the most impactful book that you've read lately?
Quiet. Have you read this one?
No, I've never heard of that.
Power of Introverts in a World That Can't Stop Talking.
Well, that's interesting.
I'm an INTJ, and the world makes me tired because I have to chameleon to be an extrovert in this world. And this book is so good if you're an extrovert who doesn't understand your introverts, or if you're an introvert that needs to be understood. It's so good. And it's by Susan Cain. Very good book.
Quiet by Susan Cain.
Yes. Super
Nice.
good.
Leigh, where can people follow you? Where can they find out more about you and see where you're speaking next and all that fun stuff?
Frankly, if you can't find me, I question your ability to use the internet. But
Yes.
I'm on all the social networks. I'm Leigh Brown or Leigh Thomas Brown, depending on which network it is. And when you send a message, it's me that responds because I do believe in that conversational nature of our networks. And leighbrown.com is my website. I mean, just look for Leigh Brown. But if you run into the Australian rugby player named Leigh Brown, that's not me. He's a man and he's now a coach and he's in the fantasy leagues out there. So that's why Google page one, I can't take it over because of Australian rugby. Drives me crazy.
Son of a bitch. Son of a bitch.
I
Well,
want to meet him one day though, because that's going to explode Google when I get to meet him.
when Leigh Brown meets Leigh Brown.
Yes.
That'd be some good content right there.
Oh, it's going to happen. When I can fly again, it's going to happen.
I love that. We will, in the show notes, wherever you guys are listening to the show, or if you're watching on YouTube, just click to the show notes or the description, and we'll have links to Leigh's social profiles and website. Make sure to follow her because she is extremely knowledgeable and hilarious. Leigh, thank you so much for being on the Massive Agent podcast. I appreciate it very much.
I am very honored to be on your show, and thank you for coming on my show as well. So you should totally include your show link on mine because that was an excellent interview too. So guys, make sure you keep following Dustin because he's out here giving his heart and soul to make you better, and that's what makes all of us better. So thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you, Leigh.